Hi, this is Bruce and his bees, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about resource hives. What's a resource hive? Do I need one? Well, hopefully we're going to answer that today. Now, to determine if you need a resource hive and if that's something you want to do, we're going to have to think about first, what sort of a beekeeper are you? What's important to you? What are your goals? If your main goal is backyard beekeeper like me, you want to have a lot of honey, you would maybe sell a little bit of honey, a resource hive is appropriate. If your goal is to produce a lot of wax, a lot of propolis, or some of the other bee products, a resource hive can come in handy. Say you're limited in how many hives you're going to be able to keep in your backyard. This is also a good reason to have a resource hive. All right, now, suppose my goal is to have a lot of honey production. Well, these larger boxes behind me are going to be my production hives because I'm producing my honey in those hives. A resource hive is a smaller hive. It's typically a nuke box. Now, I need to make a quick disclaimer. I'm a Florida beekeeper. Down here in the South, we do things a little bit differently than y'all do up north. And I've said it many times before, beekeeping is always regional. Here in Florida, it's different. We don't have much of a winter, just a few days of cold. We have flowers, floral production all year long. There's always flowers blooming here. Sometimes the bees don't even kick the drones out. We have drones all year long, a lot of times. We also don't have, up north, you have big productions of flowers in a short time. You build up your nectar season, your nectar flow, you build up massive flows of honey in your hives. We don't really get that as much. We get a slow, steady production of honey, not the big crescendos like you get up north. Traditionally, up north, what they would do is they would want to have a resource hive as a nuke, but nukes a lot of times don't overwinter as well because they can't produce as much heat to keep the bees warm throughout the winter time. So if you do a Google search for resource hive, or if you put in the term resource hive for sale, what you'll normally see is a 10-frame box that is divided in the middle, and typically it has a bottom board that's divided kind of like in an S shape, where there's an opening on this side for 5 frames and an opening on this side for 5 frames. So up north, a resource hive typically is a 10-frame box, looks just like a regular 10-frame Langstroth on the outside, but it's 2 nukes. The advantage to having that double box up north is that these 2 colonies are actually sharing their warmth, and that helps them overwinter better. Okay, now that doesn't explain what a resource hive is, but down here in Florida, our resource hives are normally nuke boxes, 5-frame nuke boxes. This nuke box, it can be either a deep or a medium, and with just the 5 frames. Some of the really interesting writers who've talked about the concept of using a resource hive is Brother Adam. Many of you have heard of him. He's very interesting to look up if you ever want to look him up. He was a Benedictine monk in England, and he was the one who developed the buckfast strain of bees that are very resistant to certain diseases. Very interesting fellow, wrote several books, but he talked a lot about resource hives. Another one is Michael Palmer. Michael Palmer has written some really interesting books, and if you go to his website, you'll see some really interesting things about resource hives. But what are the resources we're talking about? The resources for all of these beehives come down to queens, they come down to brood and food. Now, if my goal is production of a lot of honey in these larger boxes, I might have a smaller nuke box on the side over here. In my big box, anytime during the year, there can be some kind of a problem. Maybe my queen becomes diseased and the bees decide to replace her. Maybe she's getting too old. The bee's going to replace her. She starts laying less eggs. There's times when I might suddenly need a new queen. If I have a resource hive, one thing I can do is just go right over there, pull that queen out, put it in the hive with the failing queen, take the failing queen out and dispose of her. Unfortunately, she's done. Now my production hive can continue on, but I'm going to leave enough eggs of the correct age so in my resource hive they'll be able to make a new queen to replace this one that I've pulled out. But my big hive, my big production hive, is going to stay strong and robust in producing honey. Okay, now my main goal is honey in this case. So if I'm producing a lot of honey, you know what the best path for producing more honey is? More bees. More bees. So I've got a really good queen in this box over here. She's laying maybe 1,500 eggs per day, replacing all that workforce as they go out and work themselves to death bringing in nectar. If honey is my main idea, is my main goal, I can steal a couple of frames of brood from my resource hive to boost the strength of my robust hive, my production hive. So if I pull out this one frame, a deep frame of eggs, I may have 4,000 eggs on there. I'll put that into my strong hive. It's going to get a lot stronger, okay? Now, as you see from my little hives over there, if you can take a look at that nuke box over there, you see it's doubled up a little bit. I'm letting them grow up as I go along. I have a few like that. But if you want to keep your 5-frame nuke box small, if you want to keep them in 5 frames and not grow upwards, if you steal resources, you can keep that frame small by stealing resources from it to the other hives. Okay, so down here in Florida, I don't need a double nuke, but I can work out of nukes. I can work off the nuke boxes. What is the advantage of nukes? What are nukes good for? All right, well, I like to make splits for my bees. Nukes are super handy for splitting my bees into, okay? Certain times a year, I might want to prevent a swarm from one of these larger hives. So if I see the signs that it's about time for a swarm, I can create an artificial swarm by moving this queen and some of her resources into a nuke box. I can, if I want to make queens, if I want to make queens for myself, I can use a nuke box to create a starter, a cell starter. I can graft eggs. I can use nuke box a number of ways for that. Take a nuke box, hang it in a tree, and I can catch a swarm in it. So nuke boxes are extremely handy. These days, one way I use nuke boxes is I always used to transport honey. So if I'm harvesting honey from these big boxes, I used to put them into a 10-frame box, put it on a cart and haul it across the yard, extremely heavy. The way you do that, the easiest way is if you have a telescoping lid, you put a telescoping lid on the bottom where it's facing upwards, you have it upside down. You put a 10-frame box into the telescoping lid so that the lid is on the bottom, then you have your box. You drop 10 frames of honey, you pull honey frames out of the hive, you put 10 frames in, and then you put another telescoping lid on top of that, and that way the bees can't get in and rob out the honey you've just stolen from them. All right, but nowadays, as I'm getting older, I find it's a lot easier for me to transport those frames from my hives when I'm producing honey. I'll put them in a 5-frame nuke box because they're just so much lighter and easier for me to move around. So that's kind of where you have it. Nukes are such a good thing. So handy for when you're doing splits. So I hope that answers the question of what a resource hive is and what we're going to use it for. And I hope it makes you think about nukes a little bit. If you're a fairly newer beekeeper, you really should have a few nukes on hand, because you never know when somebody's going to call you and tell you they got a swarm that they want you to pick up for. Some of the examples of nuke boxes I want to talk about. such a wonderful, handy thing for the beekeeper to keep. It could be as simple as this. This is a jester box. It's an easy nuke jester box. And literally, all this is this one's dirty, but this has been in storage. I haven't used it in a while. I would clean it up before I use it. But it's a corrugated cardboard or plasticky type of nuke box. And when you buy these things, you can get them for less than 10 bucks a piece usually. And it comes in one big sheet, and you have to fold them up into this sheet shape. And it's complicated enough that you're going to want to look at a YouTube video about how to fold it up before you try it. But this is a good way to, an inexpensive, good way to go. A medium nuke box. This is an example of a medium nuke box. This is a cheap, simple one. It's built out of plywood. Now, I like to use these entrance discs. Put that way, that's the full-size entrance. Put that way, and that's a queen excluder. So the queen, she's too fat to get out, but the worker bees can come and go as they want to. And if I'm transporting this, I turn it this direction so it's only ventilation. This is a medium nuke box. It works well, but only for the medium size frames. For the larger frames, you need something like this. This is a deep nuke box. The deep frames are slightly larger than the medium frames. But again, this is a simple one made out of plywood. I don't expect these to last as long as my better boxes that I make out of better wood. But they'll last me a few years, and they work well. A different type of nuke box, this one over here. This one is a Pro Nuke. These things are great. You can get them from the big beak houses like Dadant and Man Lake. Plastic top, plastic bottom. This one will actually hold 6 frames. The rests come right out. And you can put it this way, and it's open for the bees to come in and out, or you can pull it down. Now, a quick tip, if you pull it down like this, and you go to drive off with it in your car, you'll still have a bunch of bees in your car. What you can do, as a little pro tip here, if you get one of those beefy staple guns, you push this down and put a staple right there, and then it'll be fine. It'll stay closed. The bees can't get out. But this Pro Nuke, okay, it's got the same kind of opening setup on both sides. I can do this. I can open and close it the same on both sides. On the top, okay, you see there's a slot right here, but there's not one on this side. What you can do is, on this one it says vented, and on this one says no vent. So if I put the top this way, no vent. But if I turn it around this way, vented, okay? So by having it in this position, they have a little bit of air ventilation in the top. Also, you have these 2 deals here. So what these do, when you buy these, you actually have to take a razor or something and cut these out. They're just molded in. But what I can do is I can take a Gatorade sized bottle and push holes in the top of the bottle cap and turn that upside down, and I can feed them on this side. Or I can take a water bottle, put holes in it, and turn that up on this side. So I have 2 different ways of putting a feeder on top of these bees. A Pro Nuke like this, I don't get any money from the Pro Nuke company, but I like these things. I've got a few of them. My biggest problem with these is I lend them to people and I have a hard time getting them back. But I recommend everybody, every beekeeper should have one of these and just leave it in the back of your car with frames in it. And that way, somebody calls you and has bees, you're ready right now. Okay, the last kind of nuke box I want to show you today is this one here. So what this is, first of all, I'll show you my poor graphics. You see how it says Love Shack. This is the Love Shack. What this is a mating nuke, okay, a mating nuke. Now, you can tell I took a 5-frame medium nuke, and with this divider here, that means I can get 2 frames on this side and 2 frames on this side. Now, the way you use a thing like this, first, last thing to notice, it's got a entrance, a real small entrance for this panel on that side, and a small entrance for this panel on this side. Okay, so the way I would use this, if I am out in my beehives and I find that they are ready to swarm, for example, they're ready to go, what I can do is if they're ready to swarm, or if they are preparing to swarm, I might find 10 queen cells in there. If I catch them before the queen leaves, I might try and move her already, and they'll think they've swarmed, and then I can do something with these other cells. But if I've got excess queen cells, I'll take 1 or 2 cells and I'll cut them off of the comb that they're on, and I'll attach them onto a comb. So I'll put 1 comb in here, and sometimes I'll put a little bit of honey, a little bit of food resource on this side with some pollen. But basically, 1 frame of bees of capped brood with a queen cell, and a 2nd frame of food. And when I put the top on here, I've got a top that's got a hole here and a hole here, and I'll put jar feeders on top of them. I'll put a cover over top of the jar feeders so that the sun's not beating down on them. And what'll happen is the queen on that queen cell, she's going to hatch out, and in a couple of days her wings will harden up and she'll fly out on her mating flight. And if she's successful, she'll mate with the drones she mate with, and if no blue jays eat her, if she doesn't get hit by a car, doesn't get got by a dragonfly or anything like that, she'll come back here. And she'll come in here, and in a couple of days she'll start laying eggs. So I know the timing of this. When I set this up, and when it's time for her to have been laying eggs for a day, I'll open this up and I'll pull out these frames, and if I see fresh eggs, I know that she's successfully mated and made it back. And if that's the case, then I'm going to move all these 2 frames into a larger nuke box, and I'll give them some more resources to work with, and that'll grow into a beautiful colony of bees. If I want to graft bees, it's the same thing. I graft queens, I graft my queen cells, I let them hatch in an incubator, and I'll have a queen cell in a cup, or a queen in a cup, I should say, a hatched queen virgin, and I can put her in my mating nuke with a frame of bees, maybe a frame of resources, or maybe just 1 frame of bees and 1 blank frame that they can draw on. Either way, she'll go out, mate, come back, start laying eggs, I'll move them up to a larger hive. But having this mating nuke as a resource is a wonderful thing, because today if I walk around out there in my hives and I find a queen cell that I don't want in there, I'm not just going to destroy it. I can throw that in here with 2 more frames. 2 frames from one of those large hives is not going to hurt them, and that'll let them make a new colony just like that. So nuke boxes are just a wonderful resource. I advise you to have some. You don't have to have this many of them if you don't want to, but as a new beekeeper, you should have some nuke boxes, and this is why. Thank you for your attention.